This episode sponsored by Puffin Books UK. Good morning, campers. Welcome to Radio Camp Half-Blood, a Percy Jackson Read-Along podcast. I am your host, Zach.
And I'm B.
And this week we check into Cece's Spa and Resort. That's chapter 12. And you know what? I think it's time for us to get some mani-pedis and go on a little spa day, right, B?
Have a nice relaxing time at the spa. Anytime I see anything in Percy Jackson that's in any way supposed to be relaxing, I know that it's not going to actually be relaxing.
What are you talking about? They went to that cool casino once. They went to that waterbed store. Like, these sound like some really relaxing places.
Yeah. The Lotus Casino was supposed to be a really fun time. This is like definitely, we talked a little bit about this, I think, with the Lotus Casino, but it's like definitely just like a classic storytelling thing to do where you like create this utopia, like this break from the stressful quest that your characters are on, and it's never what it seems. I think I've referenced before, like the poppies in Wizard of Oz, like how they're like, oh well, I'll just like I'll go to sleep because it's so nice and soft here, and I'll just lie down and go to bed. Like you get distracted in some way or another. Also, the labyrinth reference before that I made about the how Sarah sees her own bedroom and she just wants to just lie there and not continue on. I find this kind of stuff really compelling compared to like just like sword fighting and like slashing through monsters. I like to have a break of that sometimes and to sort of have more of a like a psychological or magical element to what's going on.
Yeah, no, I think when it comes to these chapters, I think this is where the point of like Rick Riordan trying to do infotainment comes into real play, because you have these chapters that are specifically modeled after a mythology event that has happened, such as here we have Circe, who, if you've read the Odyssey, you met Circe. She turns people into pigs. Here, it's a little different. They turn them into guinea pigs. It's a little like juxtaposition a little bit.
Yeah, as soon as I saw the title, I kind of knew exactly what I was in for in this chapter. I knew that Spa and Resort, obviously, it's going to be not what it seems. It's going to be dangerous in some way or another. And as soon as I saw the name Cece, especially, like there's anything that's like initialized in any way or that shortened or is like a name that is kind of obscuring what the actual name is, I always suspect in Percy Jackson that it's going to be a mythological figure. It's like a similar way that he obscures the mythological figure by like changing their name. It's like Cece instead of Circe. It's Auntie M instead of Medusa. Like, because if you were to say, oh, we go to Medusa's sculpture garden center or whatever it's called, you're gonna know what happens. You're gonna know that they're gonna get turned into stone or have the threat of being turned into stone. It's the same thing here. Like it's a clever way of like retreading this story without like spoiling the people who are familiar with mythology, which I like.
I mean, it could easily have been like Percy craves lettuce or Percy becomes a vegetarian, like something like that. Though when you're talking about like mythological figures with having like abbreviations of their names, so should we like be really wary of like J.K. Rowling, George R.R. Martin, or J.R.R. Tolkien?
Oh, because they're actually mythical creatures. Yeah, they're just hiding what they stand for. Yeah, that would be really funny. Well, I mean, what does B stand for? We don't know. We do, actually. We do know.
Yeah, no, there's a lot that happens in this chapter. There's actually, like, surprisingly, this is one of the most well-written chapters just because there's so many different things going on that it's almost, like, nauseating. Like, oh, there's this part. Oh, wait, no, we're going to talk about Annabeth and, like, what it means to be, like, do you want to stay here and become super smart, or do you want to keep saving your friends? Or, oh, Percy's been turned into a guinea pig. What is he going to do in this situation? There's, like, so many, like, there's an A plot, B plot, C plot, and even a D plot in this chapter.
But it doesn't feel rushed or crowded in any way, which is surprising. Like, he does a really good job of incorporating all these like plot threads in a way that's like compelling. I felt like after I finished the chapter, like, oh no, it ended too soon, but it's not that it ended too soon as like a mistake or something, like, oh, Rick Riordan, you should have made this chapter longer. It's just I got like so invested in all the threads that he kind of started to explore or like continued to explore in this. This is the aftermath of Tyson quote unquote dying. I don't think he died. This is where Percy finds out a little bit about the prophecy involving him, maybe him. They don't know. They thought it was Talia, but it wasn't Talia. So there's a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like plot elements to this. Like usually when it comes to me and I'm looking at books that I've reread a lot of times, it's always has been about plot structure. And here I think Rick Riordan does a really great job. What I meant by saying it's like nauseating is there's so much that's going on in this chapter. If you like blink, you'll miss some important piece of information, such as you could easily gloss over. Oh yeah, Annabeth kind of tells him about this huge prophecy about him if he's 16. Or then you kind of like, oh, how are they going to get to the Sea of Monsters? I mean, they're already there, but how are they going to get to good old Grover and things? There's like a lot of things. And then there's the thing about Annabeth, like, maybe I should stay here and like learn magic with Circe. This would be awesome, like ancient Greek magics.
Yeah, there's so much going on. I even think about like how like they're both dealing with the aftermath of Tyson in a really complicated way, where they're kind of like, they have to keep this forward momentum because they're on this quest. They have to save Grover. They know where they are because Percy has this like homing device inside of himself that allows him to understand like where they are in the Sea of Monsters. So he's like, oh no, I like need to get to Grover within this amount of time or else this Cyclops is going to marry/murder him. We don't really know. And then he kind of makes this.
It's more like a shotgun wedding almost, but the way I'm thinking of this now is
yeah.
Oh no, if Grover dies, once his heart stops, I'll die. Like the person's like, you can't kill me. I have a bomb implanted in my heart. If my heart stops, the bomb will go off.
There's just so much going on. And I think even about like how you see like the quiet mourning that Percy is doing because he's like pretty convinced that Tyson is gone, and he has all this guilt about not being a good half-brother to him and like kind of rejecting him and denying that they're related. Then there's Annabeth, who has her special kind of guilt about being like defensive towards Cyclopses in general and saying all sorts of cruel things about how they can't be trusted. And like they're going through all of this while also revealing the stuff about the prophecy and having to talk a little bit more about Talia, having to remember about Grover. And then they run into this island and deal with this whole other separate sidebar situation. It's like a lot to manage, and I think in the hands of someone else it could come across as like muddled or totally insane, that like the plot structure is just all over the place. But I think it totally worked. I really liked this chapter because it managed to juggle all of those things in like a very successful, clear way.
Yeah, no, a lot of this, when it comes to this chapter, in the wrong hands, this would have been a terrible info dump of a chapter, because a lot of YA books, they have the habit of like just throwing in a bunch of information convenient to the plot. How can I spread this out when I only have so like little pages to work with? And I think Rick Riordan does a really good job at this, because again, this could have been a clear cluster lock, but it isn't. And that's what I like about this chapter. There's a lot of, when we get into it, it's almost like the idea of in this is, Annabeth and Percy are unable to grieve for Tyson because they're in such a rush that they don't have time to process it. And that is, they have to get to Grover or, the camp will die type of situation. And I think that's really like an important thing is like, if you like really pay attention in this chapter, Percy doesn't have like the right emotional response, almost like he's still in shock, like he's not like crying, he's not doing anything that like a typical person.
But that is the right
like
emotional response, right? And that's what makes it believable. I don't feel like Rick Riordan drops that thread, so to speak. It's not like he's like, well, Tyson's probably dead. Anyway, moving on to this magical island or whatever. He distracts you the way that Percy and Annabeth get distracted. But there is the moment where Percy gets choked up and he thinks, oh, Tyson would really like it here because of the fountains and the animals. And he goes to look back expecting to see his face and then remembers that he's gone. Even Annabeth can see that he's upset and he lies and says that he's okay. And, Annabeth saying things like, I know, I said the thing about how you can't trust Cyclopses. Like, there's these little moments where you can see that they're grieving, and it's not just like, oh, everything's washed away, like we're moving on to this other thing, but we have to move on to this other thing. So it's this like quiet grieving that they're doing, which I felt was like really well written and executed in a way that's like it didn't hide the fact that they would be reacting in a certain way, but also it's like there's like a whole drawn out page where they have to process all of it, because that's not reasonable either, because they have stuff to do. They have a deadline, like Rick Riordan likes to give, is a time limit that they could do all this stuff in their quest.
Yeah, no, the interesting thing about this is a lot of YA books, what they'll do is it's almost like each chapter is almost like I always like to consider like its own separate book. Like sometimes they're not connected whatsoever. And here's like, oh, the repercussions from last chapter trickle over, instead of just having Tyson's dead. And then it cuts to like 2 weeks later, and they've already done the grieving process. That's all done. We're almost at the sea of like, you know what I'm talking about. There's many books like this where like they have like a big like hero's death, and then they'll have like a time jump, or they'll do something that's like, oh yeah, we don't want to show like the actual implications of a kid grieving. I mean, I guess the only example I can actually give of this where it's actually done, I think the most appropriate and the most properly, is Bridge to Terabithia, which that whole book is just about the grieving process.
Oh yeah, that whole book is about that. I mean, even Unfortunate Events has, I think, a comparable thing where like their parents die. Spoiler alert if you didn't know that their parents die in the first place.
Oh no, B, you're spoiling this book for me. Oh God, B, how could you? You are like the worst person ever. You've spoiled a book that's over 14 years old for me.
Yeah. Just a heads up. It's like the premise of it's literally in the trailer, I'm pretty sure. Anyway.
Next, you're going to tell me that Harry Potter's an orphan. Even like when you have like a character that like dies, again, that's like, I like the idea in Percy Jackson that there's actually like, you see the grieving process. It's not just something that's like brushed under the rug, especially it trickles throughout this entire chapter. It's not just Percy was sad and he kind of like, pulled himself up by his bootstraps and they kept going. No, like he and Annabeth are an emotional wreck throughout this chapter. And that's kind of like why they get so blindsided by Cersei, I think.
Yeah, I think the most realistic portrayals of grief, in my opinion, as someone who's like known, like had people close to me pass away, is having someone grieve in a more subtle, complicated way, or like to have the sort of death be fraught with your relationship to that person as they lived, sort of. And that's what made Percy's reaction to Tyson so realistic to me, I think, because when someone dies, I don't think most people right away just sort of crumple into a ball and have a breakdown. There's the shock first, and I think that's like a very important thing to portray, especially in something for kids who, they may not have never dealt with death, or maybe they recently did, and they're learning to process that as like a pretty young person, and that's a difficult thing to do, I'm sure.
When it comes to like grief and death, it's like there's a lot of like post-processing, especially. Let's look at Series of Unfortunate Events. I think that gives the best example of it is once their parents die, this is like chapter 2, so this isn't even a spoiler, is that Violet doesn't want to invent, Klaus can barely read a book, and Sunny, even though she can't comprehend what death is, bites things less enthusiastically. Like, there's certain things when it comes to a character, when it comes to like death, especially in a kid's book, it's very important to understand, like, there's always the melodramatic thing of, like, they just start crying and then they bawl their eyes out and then after a while, they're okay. Sometimes death isn't like that at all. Like, you have to, like, you have to process it, especially if you've known the person for so long. I think that's what Rick Riordan does a great job with this is, yeah, there's actually some weight to this. And I like that about this chapter is there's weight.
I mean, I can only imagine that it would be incredibly shocking because, again, I don't think that Tyson's dead, but I like the way that they're handling it so far. I think if he's actually 100% dead forever, then I would still not be super happy with that as a plot point. I don't really believe that. They even mention that, like, oh, he's impervious to fire, he can't die from fire. So it's, like, pretty well set up that he's probably going to come back at some point at an important moment in the book. But I do like this opportunity to maybe allow Percy and Annabeth to reflect on how they treated Tyson when he was quote-unquote alive.
Also, another really key thing about this chapter is this is the first time in the series that Annabeth and Percy have been alone. They've always had someone around them or they've always been around the camp. This is their like true like heart-to-heart that they have as friends. And this is like where Percy's just done with all this stuff and he's just like, hey, Annabeth, you just need to tell me about this prophecy. Even if the gods told you no, you need to tell me.
Yeah, the prophecy thing. I was just thinking that. Like, I feel like because now that they're finally, like, in this aftermath of a pretty traumatic event and they're kind of depending on each other to deal with all this stuff, they have to just be honest with each other. And he's like, listen, you gotta tell me what the situation is. I know that Chiron swore to the gods to not say anything to me, but you didn't, and you are my friend, and you need to tell me what's up. And that's, like, when we learn all sorts of stuff about... Well, I mean, like, do you want to, like, get into it?
Ooh, yeah, we learned some very big things that I thought that I might accidentally have spoiled, but I didn't. I was like, oh, maybe I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
No,
you
but
didn't
the most
spoil me,
important thing about this is that we learn about why the gods, or the big three, don't have kids anymore. We thought it was just a pact after World War II, after, certain unnamed groups, did terrible atrocities, and, we can't have these kids anymore. But no, there's actually a much more sinister reason for this, and that is if a demigod of the big three ever reaches the age of 16, something bad's gonna happen.
Yeah, generally. I mean, let me see if I could find, the specific phrasing it says, because, okay, I'll just read what Annabeth says. Percy, I don't know the full prophecy, but it warns about a half-blood child of the big three, the next one who lives to the age of 16. That's the real reason Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades swore a pact after World War II, not to have any more kids. The next child of the big three who reaches 16 will be a dangerous weapon. Why? Because that hero will decide the fate of Olympus. He or she will make a decision that either saves the age of the gods or destroys it.
And then the most typical Greek thing happens. Poseidon goes against the prophecy. You know what? I'm going to tempt fate a little bit. I'm going to have this kid fall in love. Zeus is the same way. I'm going to tempt fate, and we're going to do this. The only one that has kept his end of the bargain has been Hades.
Hades has been a stand-up guy. He's done what he's supposed to do. It's just if you knew that basically your child could be a weapon, and again, they weren't really specific or sure who this child was going to be. It's just gonna be of the big three, gonna reach the age of 16, and will make a decision. So there's a lot of ifs about that. It could be of either any three of them. It could be born at any time as long as they live to 16, so that's another stipulation. That's why it couldn't be Talia, because she didn't live to the age of 16. She became a tree. R.I.P. And then, of course, even after all of that, it's not even a specific prophecy of what they're going to do. They still have to make a decision. So it could be they destroy gods as we know it, or they save them. And that's a very big, vague thing that we don't know what that means.
No, and the great thing about this chapter, which I find is this is book 2, and the main character already knows there's a huge prophecy that's going to involve him in the next 3 years. Harry Potter didn't do it. Series of Unfortunate Events didn't do it. There's a lot of books that they'll hold off on that super big prophecy, or do this end of the world scenario that only the kids can, save the world, until the last 3 books, usually. And this is, Percy now knows in the second book, man, there's some bad stuff gonna go down if I turn 16. By then I can get my driver's license and, get a part-time job. I have to decide the fate of the world?
Yeah. Maybe it would just be better if he stayed a guinea pig, I guess, in some ways.
Oh no, see what would happen is he would age in guinea pig years, so he'd get to 16 quicker.
Oh no. See, that's a loophole I didn't even think about.
Oh no, yeah, they turn him into a guinea pig and he comes out and he's just 17-year-old boy.
They also do stipulate that the person in the prophecy has to be a person and it can't be a Cyclops, because it specifically says half-blood. So it cannot be Tyson, I guess.
Yeah, and the only person that's currently alive is Percy.
Yeah, he's the last one standing, basically.
The person that currently fits into that criteria is Percy Jackson, titular character of this book series.
Yeah, he sure is the main character, so, I mean, is it that surprising that he's, infused with this very important prophecy about the fate of this universe? Not really, but now we know the specifics of it.
There ain't no background character with pink hair or, some crazy funky hairstyle in the series, so far it's Percy Jackson.
Yeah, though, I don't know. I'm always waiting for a curveball of us finding out about a different kid of the big three, so you never know.
Oh, yeah, that's something that could totally happen. Let's tempt fate some more.
Yeah, because, they didn't know about Percy. That's even what Annabeth said. Oh, we thought it was Talia, but then she died, so then we were confused about who it could be, and then you showed up. There's some demigods that aren't, people that aren't aware of them at Camp Half-Blood. They may have not, been revealed to be demigods for most of their life, Percy didn't find out until he was 12.
And Zeus is a thirsty, thirsty boy.
Yeah, so I just think that it's entirely possible that he's not even the person in the prophecy necessarily.
But that's what the great thing about it is. It's vague enough that you can assume that it's Percy Jackson. Potentially, it could be someone else.
Yeah, there's just so many open-ended things, really. Because, it could go so many different directions as far as, is it Percy? What decision would Percy make? What would change about Percy that would make him want to destroy the gods as we know it? Like, would there be some sort of big betrayal that would make him want to do that? Would he be taken to Luke's side? There's like so many threads and motivations and things that could pop up. Then all of a sudden we could meet another character and be like, oh, wait a second, you're of the big three also, and you could be the guy. And like, yeah.
Oh, so it's not to use Star Wars in this example, but I'm going to use Star Wars in this example. It's like Luke Skywalker being tempted by the dark side, but you know what? There is another of the Skywalker lineage.
Yeah, there's just so many possibilities as far as how this is going to go.
A little bit. I mean, the interesting thing about this, again, is I like the idea of they've already set up this prophecy, so now kids in the back of their brain know, like, there's 3 more books left, because it's 3 years. Each book is usually a year. There's something big's going to happen, and we know now, we have pretty much like the Chekhov's gun of there's going to be a big thing at the end. No matter what it is, there's going to be a big event because you can't, escape fate sometimes. There's going to have to be a decision.
Yeah, that's another reason why Annabeth didn't want to tell Percy also, is that it's, again, the That's So Raven sort of formula of fortune telling, where it's like, if you know what your prophecy is, or if you know the future to some extent, you're going to try to change it. And in order for you to, like, in your attempt to try and change it, you will actually cause it to happen. That's like a traditional, like, Greek myth thing. Like, that's the downfall of someone, because they try so hard to prevent what is inevitable. That is what causes the inevitable. It's just innate. It's fate.
That's the Oedipus effect, baby. Ugh, gross.
Yeah, exactly. And many other effects. Hopefully not specifically the Oedipus effect. Yeah.
The butterfly effect also is another one, though it's a little different. I guess that's more time travel than it is prophecy.
But it's a similar thing of, like, you make a small decision and you don't realize the implication, the rippling out effects of, you think you're working towards one goal, but you don't know the bigger picture, especially in a universe like this where we're talking about gods and demigods and monsters and whatever. You don't know the implications of what you do until it happens.
Yeah, but there's so many great mysteries. The great thing about this, though, B, is we don't have to answer them right now. Or I don't have to answer them right now.
Well, you know them. That's
We're gonna
the
be left
sneaky
in the
thing.
dark. Oh, I know everything. Like, when it comes to this, it just feels like I have, like, this weird oracle power, and it's so hard. Like, I could easily tell you the future, but I guess I could, like, maybe I could just start, like, writing riddles, and they make no sense whatsoever. Like, peanut butter goes good with jelly on the Hoover Dam. You don't even know what I'm talking about, do you? Nope. Damn. That Hoover Dam. So moving on, Percy and Annabeth are kind of like just floating along. They were able to like salvage some of their goodies, such as the thermos that is now empty. They have the multivitamins, and they have 1 can of Dr. Pepper, which is like, this is their rations. Oh, they better find something quick before they start, seeing each other as like edible delectables.
I wish they had a toothbrush at least. Like, imagine drinking that much Dr. Pepper and not even having a toothbrush. I'm just like imagining the sticky, so much sugar.
Your sister reads this and she like openly weeps.
You're like, oh god, all the Dr. Pepper. Yeah, I can't even imagine.
The great thing about this, B, is the parts like we took turns like slowly sipping it. Like, it's not going to give you much water. You're going to start hallucinating pretty quickly.
Yeah, seriously. Dr. Pepper, as far as like a beverage is concerned, is still pretty devoid of a lot of water because of all the, corn syrup situation going on.
Percy should get on that like water bending train and start like pulling clouds out of the sky and filling up a thermos.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
I wonder if Percy could drink seawater and he would be okay. Is that a thing? I mean, like, I know that normal people would, like, lose their mind if they drank seawater, but, like, he has sea powers, so I don't know. I don't know if he's exempt from that.
He starts drinking it. Annabeth, this totally tastes like soda, and then she starts drinking. Oh, wait, Annabeth's not supposed to drink this, and she goes mad. Oh, no. Percy Jackson not thinking about his powers. But you know what the great thing about this is that nothing horrible is going to happen. We're not going to read about this journey of them on the raft for like 70 days because they have like 1,000 nautical miles to reach Grover. But luckily, this is the great luckily thing, is that they come across a mysterious island where nothing bad will happen. It just has, submarines, a pirate ship, some airplane, like things that, out of the blue stuff, both from World War II, the 1800s. Nothing bad's going to happen. Luckily, they land on the island and there's someone waiting for them.
who is, it's not Cece, it's like someone else greets them, right?
The way they describe her, she's in almost like a flight attendant outfit, and she's just like with a clipboard. What I'm thinking of is this is going to be such a deep cut. Only for people that like theme parks will enjoy this. In the Terminator like 3D ride experience, there was like this woman that would like be in the video in the queue line, and she would go, super. Like she was like very like uppity up, but like things were just happening off screen.
I feel like there's a lot of actors like that in Disney rides that are supposed to be like the gung-ho person, like ushering you to your death, which is exactly what this specific archetype is, of her just being like, all right, well, check, check, check. You've never been here before. First time at the spa. Let's rush you in. Now, here's the thing. Normally, I would have a problem with this plot point because Percy and Annabeth aren't dumb.
They should know better, but okay, by now they should know better. They should like stranger danger it out of there.
Right? They're not idiots. They're, specifically Annabeth is pretty well known for being like a wise kind of young lady. She knows what's happening. She knows all of the mythological goings on. She's the one who ends up guessing who Cece actually is. But the thing is, there's a couple reasons why they would get looped into this. It's not just like a random casino that they decide to walk into when they could just go to somewhere else.
Well, I would imagine what it is a mixture of desperation. They're also processing grief, and also, you know, they still need to figure out a way to like get to Grover, and this might be their best opportunity.
So then Percy basically relieved my slight grievance with this concept by acknowledging how ridiculous it is that they would get tricked again. So he just says, no, here's the thing. Annabeth and I were used to traps, and usually those traps looked good at first, so I expected the clipboard lady to turn into a snake or a demon or something any minute. But on the other hand, we'd been floating in a rowboat for most of the day. I was hot, tired, and hungry, and when this lady mentioned a luau, my stomach sat up on its hind legs and begged like a dog. So he just was like, I mean, a roast pig is a roast pig, am I right? Which, that's very dark when you think about it.
Oh, because it's a guinea pig? Well, I mean, it's like, that's some great foreshadowing then, because if you're talking about a luau, because Cersei originally turned people into pigs.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of all comes full circle. I wonder if that was intentional.
Oh my god, we're getting like super meta about this. Like, I didn't even... Rick Riordan, you mad genius. I didn't even see that. Oh my god.
You genius. Yeah, I feel like sometimes I realize things that I don't even know if they're intentional or not, but I mean, people eat guinea pig too.
Wait, no, don't.
To be fair.
Oh, I wish you didn't tell me that.
They do in South America.
Guinea pigs are like the most we're going to get into it, but they are the most majestic creatures in the world, especially when they eat, and the most adorable.
No, hedgehogs are.
I actually like guinea pigs a lot.
You like guinea pigs better than hedgehogs?
Yes.
Are we gonna duke it out on the podcast about who's better? Because I think hedgehogs are better. I'm not saying guinea pigs are bad, though. I remember in 5th grade, we had a school guinea pig, which we'll talk about a little bit. They mentioned school guinea pigs. In my classroom, the guinea pig's name was Buttercup Taffy. And we loved Buttercup Taffy with all of our hearts, and we took turns feeding her and giving her water. And then the teacher, Mr. Brockway, was going to retire. Mr. Brockway was a kindly man who had like a white beard like Santa Claus, but not quite. He didn't have a mustache, but he looked sort of like an Amish Santa Claus. And when he was going to retire, he said, okay, somebody's going to need to take Buttercup Taffy. And someone did. Someone I knew. I was friends with her, or at least like, I guess her sister took it. And then I remember years later being like, so you still have Buttercup Taffy? And she was like, yeah, I hate that thing. And I felt so mad that she got to take Buttercup Taffy home when I wanted Buttercup Taffy. But my mom wouldn't let me have a hedgehog. Or no, my mom wouldn't let me have a guinea pig. Sorry, not a hedgehog. I do have a hedgehog now.
That's the fight you had. It's like, I'd let you get a hedgehog before you get a guinea pig.
My mom wouldn't let me get any animal. It's kind of a miracle that we had a dog, even. So
my favorite line that I like about this is, so nothing suspicious happened as they follow this stewardess in a very super attitude, which is pretty much like, I'm just imagining she just has like teeth so pearly white that like she smiles so like big that you can see her gums.
Yeah, the sort of uncanny valley of it all. Like, she's just too chipper for it to be comforting.
There's like a level when it comes to being happy, and there's a threshold of like when you're like super duper happy, that means like, I'm scared you're gonna like murder us. type of happy. Like there's regular happy and then there's fake happy.
Yeah, this is definitely like I feel like this is in a million different things, like the Stepford wife kind of like idea of just like, yes, we're all very, very happy.
Not robots whatsoever.
Yeah. There's not something mysterious and insidious lurking just beneath the surface. There's no way to tell that. Everything's beautiful and great, and definitely you won't be tricked by my evil ways. Of course you will. Come on.
Oh, yeah, no, I was getting a lot of vibes of The Witches by Roald Dahl.
Oh, yeah, we both talked about that off mic, how, I mean, it's so reminiscent, especially, like, the idea of, like, a sorceress or a witch turning someone into a rodent, especially, like, a young boy. It's, like, a very clear parallel. I wonder if Rick Riordan ever thought of that, if that occurred to him that it's similar to The Witches, or if that's just a coincidence. Because again, it's hard to tell if Rick is borrowing from or doing an homage to something else in YA, or it just happens to be something in Greek mythology that is so ubiquitous in storytelling that it found its way to other stories. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's a little bit of column A and column B, because for us, oh yeah, obviously it's going to be an homage to The Witches, but to most people, not saying like everybody, but to most people, The Witches is in a very, very obscure reference.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I remember one time talking to someone, they didn't even know who Roald Dahl was, and I was like, listen, what are you talking about?
Like for us, like we kind of like, we put like our sniffers down to the ground and like we spot like a literary reference and we're like, we know what that is automatically. But then I think because we're trained for that because of Series of Unfortunate Events, which is just all literary references. So we spend time.
That's true too, which is intentionally so.
Cersei does turn people into pigs. Rick Riordan did the thing, we're not going to have Percy turn into a pig or anything. We're going to turn him into a guinea pig because that's the kid thing to do. That's the adorable, cute thing to do is turn Percy Jackson into a guinea pig. And he has like little squeaky sounds and it's fun.
Yeah, a clever pun. He always has to change it somehow. Slightly. Also, I think having pigs would more quickly give away who she is. If you were familiar with the story of Cersei and the Greek mythology and everything else, if you were like, oh, I heard a bunch of pigs. Oh, I guess Percy's going to get turned into a pig because she's Cersei. Like, again, it's the obfuscation that he likes to do. Oh, I'm going to give her a different name. Oh, I'm going to change the animal slightly. Just enough so that way it's not like people who love Greek mythology can't read these books because it's just like, well, I know what happens here. You know, he changes it enough.
Also, Rick Riordan does the thing of just having play on words, of having, instead of a pig, it's a guinea pig, which, you know, it's clever. It's actually one of the clever things. I'm sure he thought about it in the middle of the night and chuckled to himself, wrote it down like a legal pad, and then woke up the next day and wrote that chapter.
Also, like, the logic of it, too, is, like, explained, like, oh, Cece's, says to them, oh, well, I mean, like, men are pigs and I turned them into pigs, but they were so difficult to, like, manage and they were gross and big, and this is so much easier to lock away guinea pigs. Like, they're much smaller, and, like, there is some sort of internal logic to that, too, somehow.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things in how Cersei is an entrepreneur, and, like, I can turn these people into guinea pigs and sell them off to middle schools.
And sell them to classrooms, which now I'm thinking, oh my god, who was Buttercup Taffy?
Didn't you know it was the famous pirate Jean Lafitte?
Yeah, we just don't know. Maybe it's for the best I didn't take home Buttercup Taffy.
Then you would have had, like, the adventure of, like, you and, like, this guinea pig pirate. See, that's the name. That's like a kid's book. Wait, isn't that actually like a thing that's like a guinea pig pirate? I'm trying to think, isn't it like the Wonderkin or whatever that show is with the duck?
Oh, wait, yeah, not Wonderkin, though. It's, the something animals are go, like, I forget. Yes, I know what you're talking about. And they all have superpowers?
Yeah, they all have superpowers. I think there's a guinea pig in that that's actually a pirate.
Oh my god. This goes so deep, Zach. It can't possibly be a reference to that, but that's very funny.
But yeah, so they follow this woman, and she's like talking to Annabeth, like, oh, we're going to like do your hair. We're going to give you all this wonderful stuff. Percy, we're going to give you a complete and utter makeover. They're going through and like they're seeing other women on this island, and you know, this is not like a red flag or anything, but it's almost like this could have gone two ways. This could have gone not tasteful and tasteful. Like all the women on the island are like, oh yeah, all we do is we get makeup and we look like pretty princesses. In the reality of Percy Jackson, it's not like that. Rick Riordan's like, no, it's more like just a resort that all these people go to, which I like.
Yeah. I have some stuff to say later on about certain representations of evil women, and it's like very complicated, but Anyway.
But yeah, so they're going through this resort, and they notice there's like women like have like seaweed wrap, and they're having it's like pretty much like a spa, which just sounds very lovely. I'm thinking like very like Cancun environment of just having like a tropical like Hawaiian island or island in Mexico. The way I'm looking at this is a lot of like the scenery because they have like women like they're in seaweed wrap, they're reading magazines because they're noticing this, and Percy Jackson and Annabeth don't have like these red flags of like, hey, there's only women here. This seems kind of weird.
Yeah, that might be a big red flag, especially to Percy. I always think about how, like, I would never be so dumb to fall for something like this. And then I think about the time that when I was a kid, we went on vacation to Jamaica, and it was like the resort, like, you could just pay with your room key. So I just ate a lot of Jamaican jerk burgers, like, over and over again, and, like, virgin pina coladas. And I sure gained a lot of weight on that vacation, I'll tell you that much. I ate a lot of burgers.
That's like the great thing about good old like vacation, because I used to go to Cancun every year. Sometimes we would go to Hawaii. Is that these places are beautiful, but like if you don't pay attention, trouble will happen real fast because usually those resorts you go to, like it's all you can eat, like it's perfect. Like this is the problem where like you will die if you keep like consuming like all this food. It's the same as like being on like on a cruise ship. Like if you go on the Princess Andromeda, it would be the same like type of thing of just having you're gonna eat all day. There's no danger. Oh look, there's an iceberg up ahead. Let's go get a snack. Maybe afterwards we'll like nosh on something. I like that about this chapter is it's so like obvious that it's a trap, but you just want to like call Percy Jackson on your cell phone and be like, because I have Percy Jackson's cell phone number. Yeah, that's funny. And be like, Percy, this is a trap. Don't do it. And like, who's this? Wait, how do I have your cell phone number?
He just picks up a conch, like, what? Whomst or yoomst?
And then it's just, oh man, this is like, that's one thing. It's like the idea of having dramatic irony in this situation of we know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that we know what's going to happen, and he kind of knows what's going to happen. But again, this is the other justification that makes this okay for me, is that, again, they're dealing with grief, they're very tired, they're a little, like, befuddled, and they don't know where to go, and there really kind of isn't anywhere else to go, so they kind of have to land on this island. But also, there's this magical allure of Cece. She's a sorceress. She has magical powers. She's casting a sort of hypnotic spell on Percy and Annabeth. So it's not really their fault that they're being sucked into this.
So they finally actually got to meet Cece, and this is like the great part of like they introduce you to Cece, and the way to describe her is from Percy's perspective. So it's from a man's perspective. So the only things you need to learn is that Percy has very superficial tastes in women, and it's just like she was like the most beautiful person I've ever seen. Black wavy hair, she had green eyes. Like Percy Jackson's developing a type almost. And he's just like, I could not say no to her. Like he was like so tongue tied. It was almost like I'm thinking of like the wolf, like his eyes bulge out and like his tongue like just falls down, like almost like that type of cartoony superficialness. In some books, okay. I mean, Percy Jackson is 12, so I guess he's kind of like seeing women in a different light a little bit.
Yeah, he's like shallow in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's justifiable.
We'll get on to in a little bit about when he sees Annabeth with makeup on, because I was having some problems with that just a little bit.
Yeah, me too. I have some things to say about that.
I have some things to say about that as well. But it's like the idea of, this is Percy Jackson very much is like a real person in the way Rick Riordan writes him.
Again, because he's a 12-year-old boy, this trap is also primed to work on him because it plays on his insecurities as well. Now he's being convinced, oh, well, wouldn't you like to be more beautiful, be your true self? Well, look in this mirror and this is what you could look like. And he's thinking about, oh, my teeth aren't even and my hair is messy and I'm not tan enough and I'm not buff enough and I'm not tall and all of these insecurities that he doesn't necessarily prioritize. But then when she puts this thing in front of the mirror, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I could be that. I could be so much better. All I'm seeing are my flaws.
Yeah, it's as if, she had the mirror of Erised. Who knows?
Yeah, I definitely thought of that for sure. That's a good theme, though, I think, for the young readers who would be looking into Percy Jackson. Like, when you're 12, that's a really difficult thing, is image issues. You know, people are like hitting puberty, they're dealing with acne and trying to like interact with like other kids and being insecure. And I think that that's like a good like specific struggle to like zero in as a kid. I think sometimes we forget how young Percy is. We forget that he's not just this hero who goes off and saves Grover and does this thing and he, you know, has a crazy fight with Ares on a beach. Like, we think about all these epic things that he does, but he's also like a tween. You know?
Yeah, and that's the neat thing about Percy Jackson is they have the duality of, you know, he's this Greek hero, except we get to learn about Greek heroes in a much different light because we also see the vulnerability side of him. Like, in most Greek stories, you're not going to talk about a character that's like, he reached puberty and his voice changed and he had like acne and stuff. We get that in Percy Jackson. You have that interesting little like duality between the myth and the actual like truth, which I like about Percy Jackson, is you have that little in between, which most stories are like written in a way. Like in Greek stories, we'll look at Hercules, we'll look at Jason, we can look at actually Perseus, and they gloss over that because it's not important to the actual narrative. Here, it's actually important because as we find out, you know, Cece comes in and she's like, "Oh, Annabeth, we're gonna give you like a total like makeover." Like, oh, so I'm thinking of this like in like most news stations, because yes, I still watch the news when we're gonna have like a surprise makeover or do something really stupid like that, like super trashy TV. Like, I watch Good Morning America, and they do, like, sometimes they do, like, surprise ninja makeovers.
Which is like, okay, well, it's not great to be like, you didn't ask for a makeover, but I think you need one.
Well, I mean, isn't that kind of the premise of this chapter? A little bit. So, like, Cersei is like, oh, Annabeth, we're gonna, like, give you, like, a consultation. We're gonna do all this stuff. I don't even know who that person's name is. We're gonna call her Yennefer, because I don't know what she is. And
Jessica haircut.
Yes. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's Jessica haircut.
Because she's going to give you a haircut.
So Cersei tells Jessica haircut, hey, why don't you take Annabeth around the block a little bit? I'm going to talk to Percy because we're going to give him a total makeover right now. And Annabeth leaves and just good old Percy Jackson and Cersei. And Percy Jackson is just like foaming at the mouth at this woman. And it's like almost like my brain hurts right when I was reading it because it's so obviously a trap. Percy should know this is a trap. But yet he's like, no, I'm going to think with my hormones and I'm going to think with my brain.
Well, I also think she's like a metaphor, right, for like the peer pressure that children feel at a certain age, especially to look a certain way, because it's not necessarily like Percy was always constantly
Percy didn't really care about his looks until she brought it up.
He thought about them, but it wasn't a preoccupation. And the way that she phrases it, like, oh, well, don't you want to be better? I mean, surely you don't want to look the way you do now. I mean, there's so much to do. This is wrong and this is wrong. And like, wouldn't you be happier? And then even Percy says, like, I normally would feel angry if someone said that. But in this case, he just felt like disappointed or sad that he had somehow failed her and fallen short, like this sense of obligation to be better.
That is such like a teen thing, though. That actually happens with people. I know people, like when I was younger, they would point things out and then you would start to think about it and fixate about it. It's like, oh yeah, you have a gazette, and like, oh, do I? Or it's like, you should get a haircut. Like, people will, like, even in like middle school, kids are so mean in that extent of like, they just have no filter whatsoever.
They really don't.
Even like in high school, like, you had to be like really careful what you wore, like all the stuff you did. Me, I didn't really care. I just wore like horror movie shirts and
yeah. Yeah. Oh, it was a dark time for us all.
Yeah, like for me, like I would call myself an idiot, but I thought I was awesome. Like I would wear combat boots to like gym class when we were doing like we had to do like the run.
You were allowed to do that? We would get in trouble if we wore something like that to gym.
Our teacher was like 9 months pregnant. She didn't care.
Yeah, we just got in trouble. Yeah, I'm just so relieved I'm not in school anymore.
We have this thing now if Percy Jackson feels insecure about something that he doesn't have control over, which is his appearance. Like I guess he could, but in this instance, Cersei has all power over him because she shows him this mirror and he's like, you could be like this big buff dude and you can have a tan and you can like get rid of that double chin, like all these things. And Percy like completely lets his guard down as he starts fixating. It's exactly like the Mirror of Eris said in Harry Potter when Harry gets to see his parents.
It really is. Gotta mention it. Ding, ding, ding.
For people that don't know, this is just J.K. Rowling at her finest. Erised is desired spelled backwards.
Yeah, just really typical, like, okay, let's go to Diagon Alley or Nocturne Alley.
Oh, like diagonally? But yeah, it's like the idea of it's like Percy Jackson's desire is like he's looking into this mirror, he sees all this stuff. Same as with when Ron looks into the mirror of Erised for the first time, what he sees is he's an only child, he's bigger, he's the head of the house, he's also head of the Quidditch team, like he's like all the things that he looks up to in his brothers. But here we go. This is Percy Jackson, and Cersei's like, oh, I could help you with this right now. All you need to do is give me your voice. I mean, I'm sorry, this isn't Little Mermaid. But yeah, now we have this thing. It's like Cersei's like, I can make you all of this. All you have to do is drink this poison that literally glows.
I mean, milkshake. Yeah. I think it's a really important scene because, you know, when we first meet Percy, he is insecure in a lot of ways because he's bullied and he has all these issues in school and all of this stuff. I don't think that Rick wants to project that, oh, well, then he becomes a hero and he finds out who he truly is and then he goes to this magical camp and now he's finally accepted. It's still circling back to the idea that he is a 12-year-old or 13. How old is he now? Is he 13? He's 12. He's still 12.
He's not 13 yet.
He's still like a tween.
I think the reason why we're talking about this now and it's a very like focal point in this chapter is Rick Riordan, again, was a middle school teacher. This is the point of where kids start to like really like worry about their appearance, and this is where they get nasty. And you have a chapter specifically saying, hey, your flaws are okay because that's who you are. And if you don't like that, go turn into a guinea pig.
Yeah, those are your choices. Yeah, I think it's definitely like a parable about like be careful to try and change who you are because really like trying to do that is dangerous. Obviously, you're not going to turn into a guinea pig, but it's like this, you know, buyer beware story a little.
We're just getting a message from somebody. Well, I tried turning my appearance once and I accidentally turned myself into a guinea pig. Like, oh my God. Can you please be on our show? We want to talk to you about what it was like being a guinea pig.
Yeah, it's really, it's interesting. But I really appreciate Rick for featuring Percy's insecurities after he knows that he's a demigod.
I wouldn't consider it Percy's fatal flaw, but you can see like what a fatal flaw could possibly be in Percy Jackson. That is either, you know, he's insecure about himself, like he either relies too much on his friends, or it can be something like that, like his Achilles heel, almost. Because every Greek hero has an Achilles heel.
So yeah, anyway, as we were saying, because he's so enthralled by who he could be, about this idea of what he's supposed to live up to, this is why he gets tricked into drinking this milkshake that turns him into a guinea pig. It sounds ridiculous, but knowing the context, it's actually justifiable.
Do we have to put the warning out, people? Don't drink things from weird people. And if you ever like go to a bar, never leave your drink because they might turn you into a guinea pig, and that might be real weird on the dance floor.
I was going to say don't ever take food from strangers, but then I realized Halloween's coming up, so like that's a complicated thing where it's like, oh, well.
It's the same thing like don't take rides from strangers, but now Uber exists.
Yeah, we kind of just live in the age of like no one cares about those lessons. Stranger danger's not real because no one's a stranger, or everyone is. Anyway, just if a stranger weird person is like, here, drink this, and they're really like emphatic about it, like, take a minute to think.
And it glows, which shouldn't be something that happens because that's a actual chemical reaction you do not want to put into your body. Percy Jackson's body is a temple and he does not want that. But you know what? Percy's an idiot in this situation, so what does he do, B? He drinks it. He drinks it all up.
Honestly, thank goodness for Annabeth, because... If this was Percy by himself, too bad, so sad. He's a guinea pig for the rest of the book. Like, if there was no one to save him, that's it. Like, no one could hear him. He was squeaking like a guinea pig. There's no way to communicate. He didn't have Riptide. He didn't have opposable thumbs.
Or this is going to be like a totally like the Tales of Despero situation where Percy Jackson like clicks the pen and it turns into like a little guinea pig sized sword that actually he gets to have without opposable thumbs. Maybe that might be, it could be like totally like a Redwall situation now.
Yeah, like that time that we captured a mouse and then drove to a nearby church and let it go. Like, have Redwall adventures, friend.
But yeah, so now we have like this description of Percy Jackson, almost like very like body horror, as he just starts turning into like a little guinea pig. If you've ever watched the Witches, it is the most horrifying transformation you could possibly see. Oh my god,
it's horrifying. It's very distressing. I'm also thinking about Peter Pettigrew. There's a lot of like human into rodent like metamorphoses.
Well, I mean, it's like the idea of it's like the metaphor of like people being like rats, like when they're sneaky and cunning. That's usually like most times when you see someone turn into a rodent, it's usually a man. Usually when you have like, no offense, like when you have like a girl and they do something like that, they don't call them a rat, they call them mousy. There's much different distinctions.
Or they call them a shrew, which is the case of Annabeth in this, because when she tries to stand up for Percy, she's like, wait a second, is Percy that guinea pig over there? And like kind of starts to realize what's going on. When she returns, is like, okay, well, where is he? That's when Cersei's like, you shrew, we're going to turn you into a shrew, which is sort of like a differently gendered thing, which is interesting. It's like men are rats and women are shrews. And I guess it's like a specific, it's interesting how that falls on gendered lines when they're just literally animals.
It's like the same instance. I don't really want to use this, but I guess in the purpose of this review we can, is, I guess it's the same distinction of like men are pigs and women are cows.
Yeah.
Even though it's not a good thing to say, I guess it's like the weird thing when it comes to it is, Percy Jackson turns into a guinea pig and he's like freaking out because Cersei's going to be like, I'm going to put you in this cage with all the bad guinea pigs. And tomorrow I'm going to ship you off to an elementary school where everyone will love you because you are a guinea pig.
Well, except for, I don't know, the guinea pigs that don't get along with people. She's kept them in the same cage for 300 years, she says.
And Percy Jackson's just like, ree, ree, ree.
He's making little guinea pig noises because he can't communicate. I'm really glad that Annabeth is smart. Can we just say that? Like, because if she wasn't the brightest bulb, we would be completely off course here. Like, if she just was like, all right, I guess I'm just gonna stay here and live out my life with this beautiful golden braid in my hair and hang out with all the cool lions lounging about and like, lie next to the beautiful fountains and get a seaweed wrap. Like, all of those things could easily happen.
I mean, this could also be worse, that they could have landed on like Amazonian island where they just behead Percy Jackson.
Yeah, that's true. It could be worse.
But the great thing is Percy Jackson's this cool rad guinea pig now. Like, he does such guinea pig things as ree, 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 and become a depressed teenage boy, a preteen boy. But I mean, I guess there's some perks to being a guinea pig. Like, there has to be some perks to being a guinea pig.
I guess. I mean, you get pets. Yeah, you kind of just don't have to worry about stuff. It's like with most pets where it's like, all right, well, you lose a lot of autonomy, but you do get to kind of just chill, which is nice.
Do you know in Belgium it's illegal to have only one guinea pig because guinea pigs are social creatures?
Because they need a friend. Yeah, that's very sad.
Like, if you buy a guinea pig by oneself, it will actually die of loneliness, which is depressing.
Yeah, that's really sad. I'm kind of surprised that these magical guinea pigs didn't die. Well, I guess they have friends. They're just like, their cages aren't cleaned, which is another level of sadness, right? Where they say, I almost felt bad for letting the unruly pirates out. Sorry, that's later. There's like just a description of their cage and how it looked like it hadn't been cleaned in all the time that they were there.
The reason she's like that is because she's like sexist against men. So of course she's not going to clean their cage and give them the proper thing that they need because they're the bad guinea pigs.
Yeah. I had a problem with this just a tiny bit because there is this like, I don't know, like a villain who's like a woman who hates men, and it's like a very specific like vilified straw man of like, like a bad evil feminist who wants to kill all the men and or turn them into guinea pigs. It's a little bit like it could be taken the wrong way. And I know that this is just a kid's book and a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think of it that way, but that's definitely like a very harmful stereotype that exists that like I wasn't super jazzed about seeing.
Yeah, I mean, there's examples of that. Like, I'm going to give such a random movie that I guarantee you've never seen. It's called Zardoz, where it's like that. It's Sean Connery plays a man and he accidentally gets sucked into like a female women's colony and they don't know what to do. Actually, B, right now, look up Zardoz Sean Connery. This is what he looks like throughout the movie.
Okay. Oh my god. No. Zach.
Do you want to
Why?
describe that to our listeners, what you just saw?
Should I? Is that appropriate? It's like he's wearing a diaper or something. Like a red loincloth, and then just like these weird suspenders that are crossed over his chest, and literally thigh-high boots, and a very long black braid, and a big, like, American chopper-style mustache, and a handgun.
That's Zardoz for you folks.
And just nothing else. Oh, and like the suspender things are like, I guess they're like a bandolier, they're like filled with bullets. It's like a red matching bandolier. What? Okay. I don't even know how you find the movies you find, Zach.
Oh, I find my movies the way most people find them, in the dumpster or forgotten in long, old arcane vaults of movie stores. But I think the issue when it comes to like having a character such as Cersei is that, yes, it does actually have like a very harmful stereotype, because that is actually like a very common theme. And like, I guess, is it super villainesses? It's like, we hate men because they've screwed us over.
Yeah. Which is just like such a not realistic representation of the world to say like, oh, but here's the real villain, a woman who hates a man and is oppressing. Like that just like doesn't necessarily acknowledge like the structural things that are like against women. It's actually really funny when we were like sort of pre-discussing what we were going to say on the show today. I realized that today is the International Day of the Girl, which is sort of like a day that the UN created where you like discuss the sort of structural inequalities that girls have across the world, whether it be like, you know, child marriage, or there's all sorts of like different access to education and things like that. So it can come across as a little bit insensitive or like unaware to like present this character of like a woman imprisoning men when there is actually a real problem of men imprisoning women.
Well, it's also the idea of, I think, it's almost like a double contradiction, because you have this, and it's like, I'm looking at this specifically when this was written. So this was 2006. Like, the motto in 2006, probably for middle school kids, it's girl power type of like situation of having like, you have like a strong female character, is like you have to be like super strong, you have to be powerful. And unfortunately, when you have a villainess that captures men, that's a very powerful thing. You have like a super villainess that does this, and that's perfectly okay. Everyone's fine with that. But if it's the opposite of like a man that captures women, that's where it becomes a super problem. And it's like both things are problems regardless of what gender you are.
Yeah, it's interesting the conversation that Annabeth has with Cersei, because there's this moment where they're talking about like, oh, have you heard of female heroes? Like, what kind of legacy did they have? And then she, of course, starts to list them off like, oh, well, like Amelia Earhart was one. She was a demigod who people remember, whatever. And she starts to list, and then Cersei starts to list off, you know, like these mythological figures who did kind of like scary, not so redeemable things like Medea or whatever. And then it's like this, he's kind of doing this thing where he's saying, oh, well, here's the right kind of female role model and here's the bad kind of female role model. And I don't know how self-aware he's being as far as like, oh, well, we can show strong female characters, but they don't have to be aggressive. And it's like, it's so muddled. I don't exactly know how to articulate how I feel about this.
And the great thing about articulating this right now is that you don't have to, is that we actually decided off mic, we're going to give you guys our top 5 female characters, not strong female characters, because I don't believe in that type of malarkey, because it should just be like when you write a character, even no matter what they are, they should just be a character. They don't have to have strong or anything. They should just be a well-rounded character that makes sense in the world that they are presented in.
They should be complicated, yeah. Or well-rounded, like a human, I would say.
One of my favorite interviews actually was with George R. Martin, where the interviewer's like, well, you write some realistic women. Like, how do you do? And George R. Martin's like, I write them as people.
Yeah, they're just people. It's not like a separate, discrete thing. I think that we talked a little bit about this off mic, that there's like this tendency to overcorrect for the idea that women are meek or useless or not strong by compensating with an idea of masculine strength, to say that they have to be Xena warrior princess, like wielding a sword, and they have to be not like other girls. They can't like certain things that are traditionally feminine because that like portrays a certain kind of weakness. And I think some of my favorite characters sometimes fall into that trap, even of being like, oh, well, they don't like feminine things, so therefore they're like the good kind of girl who's like, they're not like frivolous like these kinds of girls who are just obsessed with their makeup and their hair. They're like a good, smart kind of, and I don't like that sort of distinction to be made, because you can be a strong character who's also feminine.
Well, and it's also the same thing with having like a character where they're smart, but it's like, oh, they have to be cunning and they have to like use their sex appeal, and like it's almost being like a Black Widow almost.
Yeah, there's that too. And then even another trap that you often fall into is like people are so afraid to represent women, or they don't know how to represent women or girls in any way, to the point where they're perfect. And that's a different kind of insulting thing, where it's like they never make any kind of mistake. They aren't like well-rounded in the sense that they have
They're
flaws.
Mary Sue's.
Yeah.
That's what they are. They're Mary Sue. And you know what? There's so many different instances of this, and it's almost like, I think the bottom line is, when it comes to writing a character, you should just write them as people. And I think that's what Rick Riordan does a really good job at, is all these people are people. They don't have to fit into like a checker box almost of like, oh, we need to have the smart girl, Annabeth. We need to have Percy Jackson, the snarky person, the main hero, like stuff like that. Like when you write a character, it needs to be well-rounded. And when you fall into these writing traps, because a lot of authors, they might be doing it in a good place, but sometimes they don't realize what they're writing might be right or might be wrong. And that's kind of like when we talk about this stuff, it's just everyone should take it with a grain of salt almost.
I have so many complicated feelings about this, because the gendered concept of like being a strong person is like so steeped in a lot of like different coding and things like that. And then I want to say, you know what, girls who are not feminine, and like that's what I considered myself when I was a kid, before I knew that I was a trans person, like they deserve that representation to some extent. They deserve to see, oh, well, it's okay to not like makeup, or it's okay that you're X, Y, and Z and you do some things that the boys do or whatever, and that's fine. But I think what bothers me about it is when it's like pitting people against other people, when it's like, oh, well, here are the very shallow type of women who care about their appearance so much that they're also not smart. Like it's like a false distinction that is often made, I think.
Yeah, so we're going to go right into our lists. We didn't talk about them beforehand, so this could be like a shock between shocks. I think there's only going to be one overlap that we think about. And our lists are kind of made up of what we think of like well-rounded females in all media, not just books, because we could easily talk about books. I like to do a little bit of movies and books, so let's see how this goes. B, do you want to go first with your number 5 and why?
So I like Violet Baudelaire as a female character.
Hey, see, that's my number 5 too.
That's number 5 too. Okay, so we can both talk about it. Do you want to talk about it first, or should I just go into it?
I'll go first. I think the reason why Violet's a very strong character is that, one, she isn't like, almost like when you have a girl character, even in like a depressing book like Series of Unfortunate Events, you could easily fall into the like Wednesday Addams thing where she's just super grim and stuff. But here she actually has like different ranges of emotion. Like you see her at her lowest, you see her at her happiest, and you also see her at, when she's at her most desperate, and that's where she becomes the smartest person. I know a lot of people that wanted to be Violet Baudelaire because, the most interesting distinction of her is, she doesn't like pink.
She likes mechanical things, which I think is also a traditionally like boy thing, I guess. I mean, like Daniel Handler kind of talked about that, right? Where he said, oh, well, like when I was growing up, like he had a sister. And so his sister was like way more like of a kind of handy person, while he was way more like artistic and sensitive and literary. And that's like the dynamic we have with Klaus and Violet. And I think I like that. There's that line where it's like, oh, nice girls shouldn't do that. And then then of course Klaus, which is so great to see also a male character stick up for his sister in that way, where he says, my sister's a nice girl and she can do all sorts of things. And I just like want to scream excitedly.
So my number 4 is Bernie Mataki from Gears of War. Now, this is going to be really weird because she's not present in the video game. She's actually present in the Expanded Universe books, and she's a very headstrong person. The way I would put her is she's a much older like female character, and that's the great thing is she doesn't care about that like all these other boys. Like she does herself, and that's great. I think that's one of the most well-rounded things is she can take care of herself. She is very funny, and also she's not afraid to get dirty, as well as she's also has emotions, and she can be feminine at certain times. She can be all these things, though she just wants to be a person rather than like, oh, I am a girl, so I need babies. No, I joined the military because I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to do all these things. And in the end, I'm old, and I'm like one of the oldest people here during like this terrible time. And you know what? I want to live my life until I die.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's like all you can ask for in a character, because it's so funny when we make this distinction, right? Like, oh, what makes a good female character? It's like, what makes a good character? Just make them a person who has flaws and strengths and, reacts differently or in a complicated way to different situations. Like that's all you can really ask for. You can't just have like this perfect person or this incredibly flawed person who plays a trope.
No, you need to have, I think what makes a well-rounded character is they both have great characteristics, but they also have flaws that show that aren't just, internal. They can be external too. What's your number 4?
Next person is Anne of Green Gables, or Anne Shirley Cuthbert.
I never read Anne of Green Gables, so...
Yeah, I never actually read them. I did watch the cartoon, I think, when I was younger. I binge watched the 2 seasons of Anne with an E on Netflix. And you can also listen to, if you're familiar with the History Chicks at all, they also have like the Recapery, which is their sort of like historical recap podcast spinoff where they talk about the Anne with an E series. And that's like a really great, I think, feminist show that like represents just women of like different ages and different experience. I mean, like even like Marilla, who's like this sort of adoptive mother figure to her. She never married, and it's sort of like showing how she's treated as someone who doesn't position herself as an opposite a man. And then I think that influences some of the perspective that Anne has towards herself, because on the one hand, she's like a little girl. How old is she supposed to be in the show? Something like 12 or 11 or something. Like she's positioning herself in regards to the boys in her class, because she's like, oh, I want to get the attention of this person and that person. And no, people are talking about first kisses and all of that. But she also has this like very strong unique personality that some people find grating, some people find charming. It's this like complicated, I think in some ways she's actually very heavily coded as autistic in some way, or coded as like neurodivergent, because she likes to talk about in very flowery language about nature and about what she loves, and she can just go on an info dump of just how much she cares about X, Y, and Z, and she's very romantic in a lot of ways from all the books she's read. And I just I love that she's allowed to be both, I guess. I like the idea that a kid can be independent and strong and want to find their way in the world, but also like fall victim to some of the common things that kids feel, especially of like wanting to please their peers or like look a certain way. There's an episode where Anne tries to dye her hair and that doesn't go so well. This isn't like super spoilery, I guess, but like this idea that she's like so insecure about her freckles or her red hair, but she also still has a very unique personality and like is headstrong in staying that way. And I like that balance. I like that, those things can exist in the same person.
So my number 3 is Princess Leia.
That's a good one.
I'm just going to say it. Carrie Fisher, I guess, embodies Princess Leia.
Carrie Fisher gets honorary mention.
Yeah, she's also there, but she gets an honorary mention. But it's like the idea of Princess Leia is both, she's very competent, she's very smart, but like she can get the job done. Same as how like when you look at the first Star Wars movie and you have, they're in the cell block and they're being shot at. Princess Leia is the first person to shoot the stormtroopers. And she's like, this is some rescue. You're rescuing me. I'm going to have to rescue you guys.
Yeah.
And it's the idea of like she's very calm, confident. And I think what makes her really well-rounded is the scene where Tarkin is showing her Alderaan, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna blow up Alderaan if you don't, tell me the plans." And she's like, "I'd rather die." And then finally, like, he gets to the point where, okay, well, fire when ready. And she finally is like, I have to tell him or everyone's gonna die, and I can't make this decision. I have to, I'd rather give the rebellion up. Or in a way, it's like, oh, they're on Tatooine. Oh, they're not on Tatooine. Fire when ready. And you get to see that response as well as in the other Star Wars movies, even The Last Jedi. You can see that, she's very competent, she's very well-rounded, and you know what? She can be hurt much as, like, being hit with a lightsaber. Like, she has had emotional blows, which I think makes a very strong character is when you can actually see, like, the sadness in them, as well as you can see the triumph in them. I guess when you have a movie and you actually have, like, a physical and, like, you can actually see it, it makes the character, same as with, like, Carrie Fisher. I can just go on a tangent how, like, you should just read all of Carrie Fisher's books and how even she as a person was a very flawed person, but even she kind of, like, resembled Leia in many ways. And you know what?
Absolutely.
That's why I liked Princess Leia's.
I think who she was as a person embodied why Princess Leia was a good character.
Oh yeah, no, there's so many great ways. I could talk about scene after scene and scene. If you want to talk to us about this, we'd love to hear it from you guys. Like, what your favorite female characters are.
Yeah.
What is your number 3 be?
So number 3 is Scout Finch. I kind of already touched on this a little bit, that it's like, I related to Scout Finch as a kid because I wasn't a feminine kid. And the idea that you didn't have to be that way was, like, really empowering to me. Again, I've talked about, like, there's, like, the double-sided thing of, like, oh, well, you don't want to, like, necessarily demonize girls who happen to be feminine when they're growing up. You don't want to say that has anything to do with the content of their character, so to speak. But yeah, she just, she's, like, very opinionated. And it's nice to see a female character, especially a young female character, who has a lot of opinions. She gets into a fight on the playground, and, like, that's what boys are allowed to do on TV or in books. Like, they're allowed to scuffle and have arguments, but, that's not what ladies do. And it's nice to, like, I don't know, to see a character that isn't afraid to act that way, to, like, stand up for herself, because, the whole socialization concept of, like, women having to be quiet or making themselves smaller and accommodate people, and having a character so young act, like, very headstrong, I think is a good thing. But, I mean, that kind of sums it up, basically. All of these have a lot of things in common. I think she has a lot in common with Anne of Green Gables, for sure, and then to some extent even Violet as well.
So my number 2 is actually Furiosa from Mad Max Fury Road. It was kind of like a toss-up between my number 1 and number 2, so there's going to be a little bit of overlap here, but I think Furiosa is such a great character, even though she's a woman of few words, is that she understands the difference between right and wrong, because her entire life she's like, oh, I want to, be with Morton Joe, and, I get to live and be happy. And she realizes the life of the other women in the compound isn't quite right. So she makes a plan to help these women. I'm going to take them to the place that I was born, where I was snatched up by the Immortans. And, I'm going to take them to the green place. And throughout this journey, you realize that she's a very strong person, but deep down under her, like, tough exterior, she's like, all she wants to do is, like, ball up and cry. Because, this is not the life she wants for anybody.
Which is, again, multi-layered. Women are humans. They have complicated emotions. It's really not that hard,
There's, like, some great parts in the thing where, like, Furiosa, like, puts on, like, her grease paint, and, like, she's like, before she puts it on, like, you see emotion in her eyes. The second she puts it on, like, she's Furiosa. And there's the part where they tell them, it's, oh, the green place you already went through, it's all poison, and she starts breaking down. Oh my God, is it, like, one of the best scenes I've ever seen, because it's just, you can see I think Charlize Theron, it's almost
she does
like
a good job.
She does a great job. Even in the movie Monster, where she plays a serial killer, she's great. But it's like, her as Furiosa, especially, like, she's a badass, and how she kills Immortan Joe, and she's like, you remember me? As, like, he rips his face off. Oh my God, I could talk about it all day, but it's like, it's the idea of, like, you need to have vulnerability in your characters. Like, I can talk about, like, certain scenes. Like, there's so many great things. Like, she's very competent. Like, when Tom Hardy, like, takes all her weapons away, and she, like, pulls out the gear shift. Like, oh, it's a knife. Like, she's competent in everything.
It's good to see competency in female characters because it's like it's so exhausting to see like a woman who's just like constantly floundering and like befuddled and like, oh god, someone help me, I don't even know.
Like even like the part of where like I could just talk about this movie, but it's like Tom Hardy steals the war rig and he starts driving off, and she's just like looking there, just waiting because she knows that she rigged the war rig that it's gonna stop because he didn't put in the right combination to make the engines go on. Like there's so many great moments with that, and I love Furiosa. Like if I was ever gonna get a tattoo, it would actually be a Furiosa tattoo.
Yeah, that's a really good pick. All right, so next character is Harriet the Spy. I feel like I read the book when I was a kid, but I don't really remember it very clearly. It's been a long time. Maybe I didn't finish reading it. But I definitely watched the movie a ton, the movie with Michelle Trachtenberg when I was a kid on Nickelodeon, or on that orange Nickelodeon VHS tape. And it just was like, I don't know. I really like when there's a female character that has a thing that she cares about. And Harriet wants to be a spy. This is like her dream. She lives this sort of other life and sneaks around and takes notes, and she wants to be a writer when she grows up. And there's like this whole sort of like plot about kids bullying her and her like writing some cruel things in her journal that like comes to light in like the public eye, and everyone's like, oh well, I disown you. Even her friends don't end up liking her anymore. And it's like this balance of like she still wants to be a spy, she still wants to do this like espionage thing that she always wanted to do, to still be a writer and make observations, but she also is a kid and she's impacted by the cruelty of kids who don't like her anymore when her friends feel betrayed by the words that she wrote. And it's kind of like, you know, she's flawed too. You know, she says some mean things about her friends in her journal, and that's why they kind of turn against her. And yeah, like she's not a perfect person by any means, but it shows that she has like a sense of purpose, like a strong sense of purpose is really cool to see in a female character, like a young female character. I notice all of these are young female characters, and it has a lot to do with me just like really being into YA, and also I think they're maybe the most important characters because it's like what young women are exposed to when they're growing up, like the representation. And I would feel great if I had a daughter and she was reading Harriet the Spy. I would feel like that, you know, that represented a well-rounded person.
That's really nice. I like that.
What's your next one?
Is Ellen Ripley from Alien and Aliens.
Oh, that's good. That's a good one.
I love Ellen. She is one of the best written characters ever. I'm just talking about the first two movies. Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection are total trash. You can just watch the first two, make it a duology, and you're good. And that is Ellen Ripley. Quintessentially, the first movie, she's just a truck driver, you know, working 9 to 5. And this alien comes on and she becomes, you know, the final girl. And she blows this thing out of the airlock, and that's great. Second movie, it's 55 years later. She has been frozen this entire time. And it makes me mad because in the director's cut of the movie, she finds out that her daughter, because she's a mom, her daughter died of old age while she was in stasis. And so the whole movie changes to be like this very maternal movie. But in Aliens, she is strong, she is competent, she is also, there's the part in the beginning where she's talking to the Marines like, hey, I want to help you guys out, and they don't believe her, and like, oh yeah, I can make that, you know, forklift work, and she gets into it, the power lifter, and she does it, and they're like super impressed. But the most important thing is once like the shit hits the fan, she's so competent, like that's who she is as a person. The best way to put it is when she meets Newt, she realizes, I have to protect this little girl. If I can't protect her, I can't protect myself, because she has waking nightmares. She has PTSD for one. She has all these horrific things, but it keeps moving her forward. When you're in Aliens, like near the end of that movie, people think this movie is like a super macho like dude flick. It is not. Like most of the guys die like halfway through that movie.
Yeah, it's her surviving at the end with a cat, you know?
Oh no, this is Aliens. This is like to the point of where she has a gun and she's got a flamethrower. She's duct taped them together because she's going to take on the whole alien armada by herself because she wants to save Newt, because she is her responsibility. And then when you realize that Ellen like shoots the flamethrower at the alien queen, is like the alien queen's going to let her go as long as she doesn't hurt her babies. Ellen Ripley is just completely like, is almost out of there, but she's so mad at these aliens that she just toasts these aliens, and the alien queen is now after her because she is now committed like she's killed her babies. And oh my God, I love Ellen Ripley because everything about her is she's strong, she's competent, she's not afraid to cry, and she's not afraid to be a badass.
Yeah, it can be both. That's the thing. You know, there isn't this dichotomy of you're a stone cold, unfeeling person, or you're constantly crying and incompetent and whatever. Allowing that nuance in a female character allows for a good female character. You don't have to be a perfect Mary Sue, kicking butt, taking names, but you also don't have to be like this sort of like cowering, like damsel in distress character either. There's a middle ground, and that's where most women fall, in the middle ground, because people are complicated.
Yeah, and I think that's the great thing about it is, and especially the ending of that movie, it's so perfect, is that Ellen Ripley just goes to sleep and she can actually sleep without a nightmare. That's the whole end of that movie. She kills the alien queen and she just goes to sleep. It's like the best like framing of a shot as she sees Newt fall asleep because she's also had nightmares, and Ellen Ripley goes to sleep and she doesn't have nightmares. It is the best scene. What's your number one, B?
And my number one pick is Matilda Wormwood from Matilda. You probably could have guessed this.
You know, I was thinking Mara Wilson was going to make an appearance on this list. I didn't know how, but I just knew.
You just knew, yeah. I mean, Mara Wilson as a person, I think, is just super awesome in a lot of ways, and she's definitely a role model of mine. But as far as, like, the character, Matilda, yeah, Matilda, the reason that she's so extraordinary at first, before she even realizes she has these, like, telekinetic powers or whatever, that's not the most important thing. It's not just, like, this physical strength that she can do things. It's the fact that she wants to learn, and not even in like a superficial way of like, oh, well, she just is smart and that's why she's great and she deserves to be happy and run off with Miss Honey and all this stuff. But what really is important is that she wants to learn because she's like an empathetic person. She cares about things, as opposed to Miss Trunchbull, who hates children and hates happiness and whatever. I think that the fact that her strength lies in her empathy is a good thing.
That's like one of the great characteristics of Matilda, is that ability to be both innocent but also being very inquisitive. And that kind of like concludes our list. And wow, it's really interesting when we talk about it and we really look at it and how we can come up with 5, but there's so many more different characters. We'd love to hear your guys's what is your ideal female character, or what is your guys' favorite female character?
Yeah, I'd love to hear other people's opinion about this. For sure. Even
in Percy Jackson, there's a lot of great, well-rounded female characters. Even like with Annabeth, as we'll see with this, is that, she comes back from Cersei, is like, Percy Jackson's a guinea pig, put in here. And Annabeth comes in, and she almost immediately is like, where's Percy? And Percy's like, as a guinea pig, is like, oh my God, like Annabeth's so pretty now. She got all this makeup on. I never thought of Annabeth as a person with the makeup.
Yeah, the makeup thing is weird. But then also he mentions that she doesn't like to wear makeup. So it's that thing that I was talking about. Again, the like, oh, you have to make the choice of like, you're strong or you're feminine. Like, I don't like that. That's not my favorite, personally.
Yeah, but also it's the idea of putting makeup on kids, like as like a 12-year-old. Maybe not so much.
Yeah, so she ends up saving the day, basically swooping in, giving him the gummy vitamin. Are they gummy vitamins? The regular vitamins. Yeah, gives him some vitamins, and then accidentally turns all the guinea pigs also back into pirates. It's Blackbeard and his gang.
So then we have like this situation where Annabeth is realizing that Cersei is Cersei. Then they have this debate where it's like, you could stay here. I am the daughter of Hecate, and I have magic and stuff. I can teach you magic. You're a daughter of Athena. You're very, inquisitive. You love all these smart things, and I can make you great. And Annabeth's like, she understands what her principles are. She thinks about it for a second, but she realizes, I have to save Percy. My family, it's almost like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and having Annabeth do this, where she's like, I'm going to save Percy, and she like dumps all the vitamins into the cage, and all the people come out, and Percy turns into a person, and guess what? All the guinea pigs are pirates. And this is where pandemonium happens.
Yeah. I really like that Percy immediately is like, well, I know what boat we're going to take. Like, he just, like, beelines to where the boats are, and he's like, I have a feeling about what boat I can control, because I'm a magical, like, seafaring creature.
I'm a magical sea boy. But yeah, that's the great thing is like they have like this pandemonium, all these pirates, because turns out one of them is Blackbeard. This is where Blackbeard went. He became a guinea pig. And Cersei's like, oh my God, there's so many men. Like, what do we do? Like, she doesn't understand. Like, everyone, drink your medicine. And they just start, Percy and Annabeth just beeline it to the dock because we got to get out of here. We got to find Grover. And like, we could take all these ships. There's a motorboat. There's a helicopter. Percy Jackson sees this gigantic pirate ship and is like, that's funny. It's called the Queen Anne's Revenge.
I don't get why he has a magical word that he says, but I'm just not going to question it. He says mizzenmast, and that's how he controls this ship, I guess.
I would think that what Percy said was more or less the lines of like, oh, because he knows what ships are. In his brain, he knows what ships are. It's the same as with like he knows ancient Greek, but otherwise he wouldn't know it.
He innately understands. Yeah. I didn't think that was a thing that existed that in this universe that you could just say a word and control something. So I thought that was interesting. Thus far, he's like willed things. I mean, he's like willed things to work. He's controlled water, but he's never said like a magical word like in Harry Potter or something. So I thought that was kind of a weird break. But regardless, they steal the pirate ship and they escape. I mean, it has to do with Percy and his magical powers to some extent because he's, son of the sea god and all that. But they wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't for Annabeth and for her to make the right decision, which is to not leave her friend behind, have him live out his years as a guinea pig.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about this chapter is it's like you don't want to have people left behind. And I think that's a very important thing, especially like this whole chapter. There's so many different, I guess, ideologies that go through this. We've talked about it in great detail, so we don't really need to have a recap. But I think that's really important to have for a chapter that's such an info dump is trying to find the right center to like stagger them. And then they set sail to New Horizons. What does that new horizon be? What's the name of the next chapter?
Chapter 13. Oh, lucky number 13. Annabeth tries to swim home. Which, I mean, that could mean a lot of things. I think it's probably going to be they're going to bicker a little bit on the boat, and then she's like, all right, I'm outie, and is going to like threaten to jump in the water, or something's going to happen and she's going to end up in the water, and that's like sort of a pun he's making. I can't ever trust these titles to be literal, so I don't really have a clear guess as to what's going to happen other than they're going to try to get to Grover, basically.
All I'm going to tell you, B, is they're on a pirate ship, and there's a lot of pirate myths about stuff when it comes to the water.
All right, we'll see what that has to do with anything. Again, Percy he's in his element here. He's good at this. So it's maybe in their favor. Kind of anything can happen at this point.
B, did we get any messages this week?
We sure did. We got an email from Georgia who says, "Hi, Zach and B. My name is Georgia. I'm 14, turning 15, literally next week, and I'm from Australia. Happy birthday. I've sent this iris message in case you didn't get my review on iTunes, and I would really love to say thank you for your podcast. It always manages to make me smile and laugh. I love how off track you get, and I love the PJO series, and have read it 10 times or so. Wow, 10 times. You got me beat by at least 9. Anywho, here's a trick to try. Go to Google Translate and type in, will Percy Jackson ever die? Translate this to Greek, copy it, paste it, and then translate it back to English. I swear it will blow your mind. All right, have you done this already?
I did. You know what it says?
What does it say?
Percy Jackson will never die.
Whoa. So do you think there's just like a Google Percy Jackson fan out there?
Maybe. I'm sure there is.
Or it's just like the way the Google Translate works?
So we did get one more email this week. It's from Becca. It says, I will not spoil you, but when you guys were talking about character deaths, I just kept thinking about this one thing. I don't know how far you're going to go with Rick Riordan's books, but it gets a little ... dark. From Becca. Oh, it does. That's not really a spoiler.
Yeah. Oh, character deaths. Yeesh. I mean, I was raised on Unfortunate Events, which is like a character death a book at least. So I just I'm like a little desensitized, and like this, I blew off the fact that Tyson died. I was like, he's not dead. Like I don't even care. I'm like, he's fine, right?
Because of the evidence discussed on page 9, reason now suspect that there might be a survivor of the fire, but the survivor's whereabouts is unknown.
Yeah, just character deaths are always rough, but at the same time, I think I'm kind of desensitized to them because I'm used to that in YA. But I don't know. Maybe if they do kill off a main character, then I'll be devastated anyway. I always am, even with unfortunate events, even though I know it's going to happen.
Yeah, no, that's the crazy thing about like character deaths is it happens. And you know what?
You know
Percy
it's going to
Jackson
happen.
is subjected to that as well. That's not really a spoiler, but it will happen eventually.
Like you reread a children's book and a character dies and you think, oh, well, I'm not going to be upset this time. Or you reread it and you go, they're not going to die this time, which is like, what is your brain doing there where you're convinced that somehow the ending will change?
If I read it differently, it'll change the outcome.
Yeah.
I gotta think positively, like The Secret.
Yeah, if you put your shirt inside out and you put a spoon under your pillow, then Uncle Monty will be just fine at the end, you know?
Lemony Snicket, I did it. Well, what's gonna happen now? Is Uncle Monty alive? Hello?
Oh, I want him to be alive. Anyway, God, I really hope that people have already read those books, because I'm sorry about spoiling.
So we did get one iTunes review. It's from it's from the same person. Unipuppy15 from Australia. Hello, my name is George and I'm from Australia and I absolutely love your podcast. It always manages to make me smile or giggle considering I've read the whole series 20 times. Maybe I might be over-exaggerating. Anyway, here's a little trick. The same thing with Google Translate. Yes, Percy Jackson will never die. Thank you so much, Georgia, for that wonderful iTunes review. We actually just found out that we're actually in the 200 of podcasts for literature. We're about 226, and
we're like 226, so we're almost at the top 200. So that's like amazing that you guys are listening.
We're getting close to the top 200, and if you guys could keep sending us like reviews and stuff, it'll bump us a little more into those slots, and we'd really appreciate that. Where can they find you, B?
You can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com, and you can find me on Twitter at bkellygorman.
And if you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Suda41, that's SUDA41. And if you want to follow our show on Twitter, it's at halfblood_radio. If you want to email the show, you can email us at radiocamphalfblood@gmail.com. We'll read any messages you send to us. We really appreciate it. This episode's sponsored by 9 from the 9 Worlds.
The Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard trilogy may have concluded, but we haven't heard the last of our favorite peeps from the 9 Worlds. Join Hearthstone, Blitzen, Samira, Alex, Jack, TJ, Mallory, Halfborn, and more on a hilarious and unforgettable journey through Rick Riordan's unique take on Norse mythology.
The perfect gift for Magnus Chase fans.
Available now in hardback and audiobook.
Feel the power of 9. I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And keep staying mortal. Bye.